if I were to do it again, what would I change? I think a 3-car solution might be optimal for most driving enthusiasts, and I'm going to explain why. Today we're actually driving a CX-70 from Mazda with their brand new inline 6-cylinder engine. For those who are new to the channel, 2 out of my 3 cars are actually Mazdas. I have a CX-50 and a ND3 Mazda Miata, and also have a Lotus Emira. And the reason why I think a 3-car solution makes a lot of sense for most driving enthusiasts is that each car can really have its own intended, distinct, carved out purpose. And what I think a 3-car solution could look like is actually having one car as your daily, in this case, let's say a Mazda CX-70, or in my case, a Mazda CX-50. You can then have your comfortable street sports car for date nights and just driving around the canyons. And then finally, a track car, which for me is my ND3. And by doing so, each car has its specialized use case, and you're not forcing one car to be, jack of all trades, master of none, and highly compromised, where it has to be your daily and your track car and your fun weekend sports car. You can have these more specialized functions and allow the car to excel at its intended use case. I also think that by having a dedicated track car, which will hopefully be somewhat cheaper and maybe more disposable than your sports car, you don't have to baby it on track, because sometimes, you'll see people with very expensive cars that they drive on the street and they take it to the track, but now because it's, a $200,000, $300,000 supercar or Porsche, they tend to baby it and they can't push the limits and enjoy themselves and improve their own driver skill as much on track. So in my case, as an example, I street my more expensive Lotus Emira, and I have tracked it once, which I don't think it's great on track, even with the sport suspension. That's a whole other conversation. And the Miata, which is essentially 1/3 the price, is my track car, which is much cheaper to replace if something went wrong, and also the consumables are quite a bit more affordable too. Now, one point I do want to address right off the bat is, for a lot of people, having 3 cars just isn't feasible. You're younger, you're earlier off in your career, you don't have garage space. These are all totally valid. You don't have to have 3. In fact, I had only 1 car up until I was like 31 or 32, something like that. And then I got to 2 cars for a year or 2, and then I got 3 cars. And by going slower, like I had my Scion FRS for 9.5 years, guys, 9.5 years with 1 car. It actually gave me more appreciation when I was able to then explore other cars. And it also allowed me to pursue mastery with the FRS. Not to say that I was the #1 best driver in the world, absolutely not. But I was able to accelerate my rate of driver progression with that car because I got to know it very well. Lightweight car, cheaper, it could be a tool for enjoyment and for learning rather than something I had to baby. And by doing so, I could again push the limit and accelerate my own rate of driver improvement. Now I want to go over the cars in my garage, why I chose them, what I would do differently, and how it can help inform your own decisions. So my daily is actually a CX-50 Turbo Premium Plus from the 2023 model year. I think that was actually the best model year for driving enthusiasts because they had stiffer suspension and heavier steering. That heavier steering and stiffer suspension makes it feel way more fun than a affordable CUV has any right to be, in all honesty. It's a car that doesn't suck your soul. Most daily drivers are not fun to drive. Like when you get up to RS6, Avant, okay, sure, very fun daily driver. But at a more affordable price range, most of your daily driver comfortable vehicles that are more practical, they have the space in the back, etc., they feel like a chore to drive. And the CX-50 is unlike anything else. It's largely because of the GVC and the suspension tuning, so the car feels a little bit more dynamic and responsive, even though it has a torsion beam rear suspension. And then it has this phenomenal steering that's actually better than most modern sports cars. And I'm not even kidding when I say that. It is so good at steering. And you're going to notice that I do prioritize steering more so than the average driving enthusiast, which is why all 3 of the cars in my garage do have excellent steering. And while the car is not perfect, I think with the turbo engine, it has more than enough performance. I think the exterior styling is phenomenal. The interior it's like, for my needs, it's more than good enough. I think something like the CX-70 or, more luxurious German vehicles, as an example, have nicer interiors than the CX-50. But the CX-50 I very much appreciate because you have the physical HVACs, nice design, not the most beautiful design, good screen. It actually feels, it's not a luxury car, but it feels quite premium. And people that get in the car, the first time they get in, they're usually surprised by the level of quality and how nice it is and comfortable it is. since it is, again, just a Mazda, right? So that was category number one, which is the daily driver, which I would say optimizes for, in my case, comfort, practicality, and still being fun to drive. Then category number two, the street sports car, is all about engagement and connection without beating you up, because you still want to drive it primarily on the street, which are going to be bumpier than track prepped surfaces. So in my case, that's the Lotus Emira. And the reason I love the Lotus Emira so much is that it puts communication and driver engagement front and center, more so than performance, more so than fit and finish, more so than anything else. And if you're watching this channel and you care about driving and you enjoy the experience of driving, I think that at $100,000, there is simply no other car you can buy new that comes anywhere close. Even the Porsche GTS, which I guess you can't buy the GTS 4.0 anymore anyways, but even when you could, the level of engagement of the Emira is just second to none. Why is that? Well, number one, the only two manufacturers that are really still providing hydraulic steering are McLaren and Lotus, and they both have some of the best steering that you can buy in modern day. So the steering is phenomenal. It has a very satisfying manual transmission, which is not the most technically proficient. It's a little bit clunky at times, but just getting it right feels very rewarding. And if you're the kind of person that enjoys a challenge and pursuing mastery, it forces you to be very good with your manual transmission behaviors. It's not very forgiving. Then you also have this aluminum extrusion chassis, which has great rigidity at a relatively light weight. The car weighs in just around 3,200 pounds, which is very similar to a Cayman, but it has double wishbone in all four corners, whereas the Cayman is strut, and you have that great chassis communication as a result. Now, is it as quick as a Cayman, as proficient as a Cayman, as balanced as a Cayman? No. The Cayman is a lot better on track, but the Emira, I would say, is a lot better on street, stock versus stock. The reason being that the Emira does something that is incredibly rare to find, which is you find it fun driving it 3/10, just puttering around town, but also 9/10 when you're in the canyons really driving it hard. Maybe not quite 9/10 on the canyons, let's be real. We're more like 7/10 on the canyons, maybe 9/10 on track. But you know what I mean. Whether you're driving it slow or hard, it's incredibly rewarding and fun to drive, which is rare. My Scion FRS, my GR86, those are cars that you have to really wring the snot out of them to enjoy them. Driving them slow, I don't think they're fun. Most cars are like that. Or they're very nice when you're driving them slow, and then when you start driving it hard, it kind of falls apart. And for the Emira to balance both of those in modern day, I think is truly phenomenal and makes it really one of one, especially at that price point. Now, when you get up to supercars, yes, a lot of supercars can do that too. But at 100K, there's just no other experience like it. So normally when you have a lot of driver engagement and communication, it tends to be harsh. You get that more NVH. It's fatiguing to drive. The Emira, that's not the case. Even with the sport suspension that I have, very supple ride, very comfortable, and just mastering both of these, the comfort for the street as well as the communication for the fun factor driving it slow and fast, I think is just, again, it is such a draw to the vehicle, and that's why I love it so much. It also doesn't hurt that it looks drop dead gorgeous, and it has a very unique supercharger whine and engine character, even though I do wish that it revved out beyond the stock 6,800 RPM, which I might be changing with a tune. But for the use case of enjoying a car on the street and having it communicate, be fun, and not punishing, I find the Emira is what I consider one of the strongest options at $100,000. But the Emira is no track monster, and that's okay, because that brings us to category number 3, which is your dedicated track car. And I think what I find most valuable in a track car, which might be different for you, because a lot of people do prioritize performance and lap times, I actually care a lot less about that. I care about my own driver skill progression, meaning can the car be used as a tool to teach me how to become a better driver? Is it lightweight and communicative? Because I think heavier cars that have a lot of performance but not a lot of communication make it harder to improve your driver skill, and also just aren't as fun. I think communication is a very big part of the driving enjoyment experience. And is it a car that I can really rag on? Does it have issues with overheating, and do I constantly need to baby it? Or is it a car that I can really beat on and not have to worry too much about? And that brings us to my 2024 ND3 Mazda Miata. Now, the ND2 and ND1 were never on my radar. The ND1, the engine wasn't quite there. The ND2, they fixed that, but then the steering was still shockingly bad, I would say, in the ND2. And the ND3, they finally fixed it, and that's what actually motivated me to get one. Because again, I do admittedly care more about steering than the average driving enthusiast, which is okay. We all have our own thing, right? And I've had the ND Miata for a year and a half now. And here's the thing, I actually think it's kind of overrated stock. Because unlike the Amira, I think it's fun to drive slow, but when you start driving it hard, it actually kind of falls apart. The overly soft suspension, tons of body roll, it just doesn't inspire confidence. And I understand the philosophy that Mazda has, is that they want you to feel the speed, which is cool and all if you're driving 5/10, or if you're not as experienced driving, it can feel more engaging because it's like, oh wow, I'm really feeling everything, I'm moving so much. But if you're starting to push it at 6 or 7/10, that lack of immediacy actually reduces your confidence. It makes it harder to drive hard. And a lot of people think that by having soft suspension, you can predict what's going to happen and see it in slow-mo, and therefore it's easier to drive. Again, when you're driving at 5 or 6/10, yes, but when you start going 6, 7, 8/10, you lose predictability and linearity with your inputs and your responses. So once you start modifying it, I think it becomes a much better vehicle. But yes, stock, I do think the Miatas are overrated. Now, I have done several mods on the Miata so far, and I'm doing a very stepwise progression so you guys can see how smaller mods actually change the driving experience and various issues. Like I had brake overheating, and rather than going for a big brake kit, which is the final upgrade to really solve it, I started with just brake scoops. And then I might do brake ducting, and then maybe larger rotors, and then eventually maybe a BBK. So I'm trying to give you guys more of a stepwise progression to understand what you may want to do in your own ND Miata. So far I've done roll bars and street coilovers and wheels and tires and seat lowering bracket. And you can find the full mod list in any of my more recent ND3 videos. And there's much more to come, so subscribe if you do want to see that journey and see it on track and on street with that stepwise progression. So the Miata isn't the only car that I think fits this use case well. I think that there are many other cars, but what I would again suggest for those who are starting off is focus on a car that is ideally front engine rear wheel drive, because I think that's going to teach you a skill set that is so important for driving in terms of how to handle throttle induced oversteer, just things that you can still be a great driver with FF, like front engine front wheel drive, but you're not, I feel like you're missing a big part of core driving competence if you don't practice with FR as well. You want to go lightweight, you want to go easy on consumables, and you don't want to have such a high performance ceiling that you're unable to push the limit, because the first time driver on track with a Viper ACR is so underdeveloped as a driver that they can't even approach the limit, because if they approach the limit and make a mistake, there's no time to catch because you're going so fast that you have a catastrophic accident. So that's why I recommend slower, lighter, communicative car to really learn those skills. And even when you become a more advanced driver, you can still learn a lot from these cars. So ND Miata is a great example. NC Miata is also excellent. The NBs, NAs are not bad, but you really have a compromise in chassis rigidity there, and when you start doing coilovers, they can very much overwhelm the chassis. GR86 or FRS, BRZ, all great cars. Also the E46 and E92 M3, as well as S2000. Those are my favorite cars for track, and if I had to get rid of the ND, I'd probably go for an S2000 or an E46. I think those are all really phenomenal options. I actually started with an FRS, tracked that, then did a GR86, tracked that, and those are great cars. Probably some of the most progressive in terms of limit behavior and more forgiving. So I think those are some of the best cars to start with. And also, when you're younger and you don't have space for 3 cars, they have the most practicality too. You can fold the rear seats, fit a ton in them. I used to call my FRS my clown car because you could fit so much more inside of it than you would expect just looking at the car. I even fit my 58 centimeter road bike. I'm 6'1", so I have a larger road bike, and I would just take off the saddle and the front wheel, and it would slide behind the driver's seat. You just fold down the rear passenger seats. And I would even move between apartments, obviously no furniture, but all my belongings, my electronics, my clothes, everything would fit in my little Scion FRS. So shockingly good cars. Now finally, if I were to do it again, what would I change? Let's start in the same order. So with the CX-50, I wouldn't change a thing. I think the 2023 Turbo Premium Plus is the single best CX-50 to buy. simply because you have the power, you have all the features, the 360 cam, etc. You have the heated, cooled seats, you got all the goodies, and you have the best driving dynamics of any CX-50, because in the 2024 and onward, they lightened the steering, softened the suspension, doesn't quite drive as sporty. It goes a little bit more mainstream so that it's less offensive, because people were complaining that the steering was too heavy and hard to turn, which I don't know. Even my mom, my 68-year-old mother, had no issue with the steering weight, but I guess some people do. However, I do think as my budget increases, I'll probably go for a Cayenne, because in the future, I will probably want to tow a more dedicated track vehicle that will be more and more uncomfortable to drive to and from the track, and may even become not street legal, who knows. I just drove this K-swapped Lotus Elise at Thunder Hill last week, and that was such an experience, probably my all-time favorite track car, and not a street legal car, have to tow it, so who knows. Might be doing that in the future. I actually never expected to own the CX-50 for so long, but more than 3 years in now, almost 3.5 years actually, I still just love driving it so much more than I expect. Next up, the Amira, and this car, I again wouldn't change. I don't think any car is perfect, right? So with the Amira, I think the one big thing holding it back is just the engine, because the red line cuts in too short. The actual performance level, I think, is fine. I adore the car. I am willing to compromise on an engine, maybe more so than the average driving enthusiast. I care a lot more about communication, steering, and chassis balance and handling. And I can see the engine being a deal breaker for some driving enthusiasts, because that 6,800 RPM red line just teases you and just constantly cuts in on the fun. So there are tunes that raise it to 7,000, 72. There is a company working on a 7,500 RPM red line too, but let's just say that gives me pause, because I mean, we'll see how reliable it is, but that just feels like a bit much for the engine. We'll see. Now, the final car, the Miata, the one that I would probably actually be most likely to change. I think it's a great car, but I still lust over an S2000, because even though the S2000 doesn't have great steering, right? The engine transmission combo is just so special. The platform, especially when you modify it properly, is such an enjoyable, one of a peak driving experience, truly. And it's really Honda at its best. So, by the way, with the steering, you can actually improve it with your alignment, with your wheels and tires, with bushings, etc. And you can see multiple S2000s I've reviewed on the channel, including some that were just. You can go on my Jubbal Cars Driving Index. It's linked below all my videos. It's a Google spreadsheet where I rank all the cars. And like, there's this one S2000 that's track packed by this aerospace engineer, this rocket scientist, right? And it's just like, it's up there with all the Porsche GT cars. Such a good driving experience. And I do love the Miata. I do want to keep progressing with the Miata and modify it more and show you guys what the platform is capable of, the things I like and don't like, and it can hopefully inform your own decisions. But when I move on from the Miata, maybe in the next year or two, right now I'm still leaning towards S2000. The heart has always wanted an S2000, and I think there will be one in my garage in the future. So my recommendation for you, the viewers, if you want to do the 3-car garage, I'd recommend one car, your most driven car being your daily, which is focused on comfort and utility, but hopefully doesn't suck your soul when you drive it. Number 2 is your street sports car, which is for enjoyment, pleasure on the roads. And then number 3, your track car, which is really designed for limit handling and improving your own driver skill, which I think is the most rewarding thing of being a driving enthusiast. That way you get to enjoy different dimensions of driving and different things cars have to offer based on your mood, based on your use case for that day. And you don't have FOMO. You don't get bored of cars, because it's always changing within those 3, depending on which keys you decide to grab as you head to your garage. I'd love to hear from you all. What is your 3-car solution, either right now or your realistic, attainable 3-car solution? I'd love to hear it with a comment down below. My friends, much love, and I'll see you all in the next one.